On today's show, the Hawks fall at the hands of the Chicago Bulls on this Monday evening in the final game, at home at least, before the All-Star break. And really, it was the defense that kind of collapsed for the Hawks in this contest. Offense was probably good enough to win, but the defense was certainly not. We'll get into all of that, what transpired, how it sort of informs the future, and much more. And all of that is on the way.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1652 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Monday evening into Tuesday. And today's show is brought to you by the folks at PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. And the place to go is prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA for first-time deposit match up to $100. Check it out now at PrizePicks. Also, I want to encourage you to make us your first listen each and every day. Start your day with us or end the day with us or whatever you want to do. But please check us out across podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts and Spotify and Overcast on the audio side, as well as YouTube on the video side. And today's show will focus on what became a home loss for the Hawks, 136-126. It was a closer game than that for the most part, but it snaps a two-game winning streak for the Hawks. Also, they squandered a chance at home to win their seventh game in the last 9. They were up by as many as 13 points in the first half of this contest. Gave a big run at the end of the first half to kind of blow that lead once and for all. It was close fought in the second half for the most part. Atlanta was within single digits really the entire way until the end, but certainly pretty ugly offensively at times, but certainly defensively pretty much the entire game. And then they allowed, by the way, a season high in points for the Bulls. Not for the Hawks allowing, but for the Bulls scoring at 136. So we'll get into it now, how this one unfolded. Certainly not a great performance for the Hawks in any way, shape, or form. We'll open sort of broadly with that. And how, I saw, tweets about how this was a disastrous loss. And, yeah, it was not a good performance. Broadly speaking, the Hawks were favored in this game, according to our friends at FanDuel, by about 5 points. So nothing crazy, but certainly they were the team that was supposed to win, quote-unquote, in this contest, even with only 10 guys active for the Hawks. Now, they were only missing one core rotation player, and that was Clint Capella. DeAndre Hunter returned in this game. They were without AJ Griffin and Wes Matthews and Patty Mills. They were sick, but the Hawks were still, in pretty normal form short of Capella as Bruno Fernando came back to give some more size, etc. The Bulls actually did not have Alex Caruso in this game, and normally they are much better when he plays, and also Zach LaVine's out for the season, so no excuses there. No, rest situations or any of that stuff. Just a flat-out loss for Atlanta. And I have to start here. The defense of this game was just not good enough. And that's probably being kind in this spot. I already said it once, but a season high in scoring for Chicago, 136. They also had a 128 offensive rating, did the Bulls, in this game. That is really bad against a team in Chicago. They're not terrible offensively, but they are not great at all offensively. And I will say, it was kind of funny. The Hawks were pretty decent enough, at least on the scoreboard, defensively in about the first 10-ish minutes. The Bulls scored 18 points in the first 10 minutes of the game. And then the last 38 minutes, they scored 118 points. So that's pretty wild in itself. And perhaps the craziest single stat of this game, or maybe just takeaway or whatever, is that the Hawks actually rebounded the ball extremely well in this contest. So for some context here, the Bulls, with Andre Drummond playing a lot of minutes off the bench, he's one of the best rebounders in the league, if not the best when he's at full strength, plus Vucevic, they certainly had a lot of size in the front court. At one point, the Bulls were playing two centers together, and pregame, that was a story, and it probably should have been. The Hawks, even when they've been winning recently, have been rebounding the ball quite poorly, and in this game, they rebounded the ball extremely well. And not just because the Bulls were making every shot, but also because even on a rate basis, they did a good job there. And starting there, if all you knew about this game is the Hawks could rebound really well, they'd have been in good shape, but everything else, and I mean genuinely speaking, everything else defensively was bad by the numbers. So the Bulls shot 55% from the field in the game. They were 25 of 32 at the rim. That's a lot of attempts and also a lot of makes. 68 points in the paint for Chicago in this game. And then you throw in the fact that the Bulls had an uncharacteristically good three-point shooting night as well at 13 of 28. Now that is a little bit of being unlucky, a little bit on three-point shooting. Because the Bulls are not great as a three-point shooting team, and guys like Ayo Dosunmu hitting 5 of 7 is a little bit tough. But don't get me wrong, the defense was bad in this game. They allowed a ton of layups, a ton of easy buckets around the rim. Back cuts and perimeter containment was the problem the entire game, and that was probably the number one problem, I would say, in this one. But they allowed 29 free throw attempts. That's a lot as well. 29 assists for the Bulls, and they only forced 6 turnovers. So if you're going to play the way the Hawks did in this game and allow a bunch of easy stuff, you kind of have to offset that with turnover creation to kind of keep the possession battle in line. And even with, the Hawks rebounding the ball well, etc., the turnover battle swung to Chicago, and that kind of hurt them too. So, basically got drilled all the way across the board defensively, other than rebounding. And when you adjust for opponent, it's pretty rough. Like, yeah, DeMar DeRozan's awesome. He's not a flawless player, but certainly a guy who it should not be a surprise he had 29 points. But Vucevic has been bad this year. He was really good in this game offensively. Dosunmu had a career high. Kobe White had 20 points. So not a whole lot to speak of defensively, in a positive light for Atlanta in this game. And, that kind of, aligns with the rest of the season in a lot of ways. The Hawks have been bad defensively for most of the year, but they've been a little bit better lately. That did not happen at all in this game. In fact, this was probably one of their worst defensive performances in the season. Certainly, I don't want to rank it right now off the top of my head, but not a good defensive performance, and that's what cost them, for the most part, in this game. By the end, the offense was actually okay. Now, it was not great, and we'll get into kind of the more of the context about that as this show goes on. But the Hawks ended up putting up about a 121 offensive rating. And man, if all you told me was that, even, that's pretty good against this Bulls team that does not score at a high level. But the shooting was just okay. Actually, it was kind of maybe below average on the whole for the Hawks in the entire game when you ignore free throw shooting. But in the second half, they shot 51% from the field, 15 assists, etc. They got to the line 29 times in the game. They had 33 assists and 12 turnovers offensively. That's a great ratio. All these things, like, they didn't really have anything bad offensively other than some shooting issues from 3-point range. They won the glass, as I talked about earlier. They had 7 guys in double figures offensively, but without going into it too far right now, as we'll do it later, the Hawks had a weird night from Trey and DeJounte, who were collectively, I'm going to do the math one more time here. Yeah, they were collectively 10 of 31 from the field and 4 of 18 from 3. And, the Hawks, it's not impossible for the Hawks to win games when they do that, but they are heavily reliant on Trey and DeJounte, especially Trey, and neither one of those guys were good in this game. Now, they had 23 assists combined, so there were some nice moments, but shooting-wise, like, it's really hard for this team to overcome Trey and DJ doing that. And they were just also, not even just the shooting, they didn't play well, either one of them in this game. Offensively, defensively, it was kind of a mess on the perimeter. They almost made up for that with DeAndre Hunter and Bogdanovic going crazy. They combined to shoot 17 of 30 from the field and 10 of 17 from 3. So that kind of balanced it out. That's kind of how you get to a pretty good offensive performance on the whole with Trey and DJ doing that, because it was offset by, really, really good nights from Hunter and Bogey, but it wasn't quite enough to, again, not to bring things full circle once more, but that's why I'm talking about this being a defensive first loss, and pretty easily when you evaluate this game, it was much more about the defense than the offense. And yeah, it would have been better if Trey and DeJounte were better, and they were not good in this game, but they almost would have won it anyway had they gotten some more stops, and they just simply did not get stops along the way in this one. So we'll talk about the context more as the show goes along, talking about how it unfolded, some of the observations along the way, the player stuff later on in the podcast. But broadly speaking, not a great performance. And Bogey said after the game on the record at the podium that the Hawks had a pretty obvious and also just like stated goal to win their last 4 games before the All-Star break. And they had a chance to do that right now. They could have closed the All-Star break, the first half, I should say, with 8 wins in their last 10. But this loss is a bit of a speed bump. As we'll talk about later, Okongwu is now potentially banged up. He has a toe injury that we'll talk about. And Capella's already out. And, some challenges lay ahead. So we'll get into that later. But certainly, on the whole, not the best night at the office for the Hawks on this Monday. We'll talk more about that in a second. But first, a word from our sponsors on the show. Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks and Demons and Goblins are the newest and most exciting ways to play at Prize Picks. Square smart with red demons or green goblins give you different payouts. You can now win up to 100 times the money and just as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. If you want to play alongside Prize Picks some of their favorite players like rapper Meat Mill or comedian Andrew Schultz, you can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view some of the interests from some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each and every week. They offer injury insurance as well, so their interests stay in play even if one of your players happens to get injured along the way. And it's also simple to play. I can make picks. It's been an entry in just a minute or less. It's that quick. They have fast withdrawals as well. They have easy gameplay and an enormous selection of players and stat types. That's what makes PrizePicks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. And I've been playing on there for quite some time now. I got dug in there tonight on the Hawks game and across the NBA world, college basketball stuff. There's a lot to get into, and I really enjoy that each and every day. And the place to go, of course, is prizepicks.com/lockedonnba, and use code LOCKEDONNBA when you get there for a first-time deposit match up to $100. One more time, that is prizepicks.com/lockedonnba, and use code LOCKEDONNBA. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy with PrizePicks. Okay, and to the game flow in this contest. Early on, the Hawks had their biggest and best run of the game. It was actually a 10-0 run after kind of a not clean start. It was kind of uneven for both sides in the first few minutes, but then the Hawks scored on 6 straight trips, and again, a 10-0 run to go up and kind of go up to double digits and be in pretty firm control. Rotationally, there were not huge surprises along the way. There was one point of uncertainty, but for the most part, it was Bogey, it was Hunter. The Bulls did play big, and I actually liked the adjustment or non-adjustment by the Hawks to not kind of try to match that. They played small against that group, and it worked just fine against the two centers. Bruno Fernando came in for the backup center minutes after he missed the game on Saturday. That was a very normal thing. Okongwu was really good, and Bruno was probably not in his first stint in particular. But the one point of uncertainty, and I told people this before the game, all this stuff, I thought that it was going to be a pretty obvious top 8 with the bench guys of Hunter, Bogey, and Bruno as the backup center. And the question was, who was going to be the 9th man between Garrison Matthews and Kobe Buffkin, who's still up with the Hawks right now. It was Garrison for exactly 4 minutes. And in the second half, it was an 8-man rotation. So I saw many people, and I agree with this observation, lamenting that Kobe Buffkin did not play at all because, A, he might have helped with the perimeter defense, but also just the fact that, Garrison played over him. I think one of those is reasonable, the perimeter defense point for sure, but I don't think that they were going to play Buffkin a lot in this game either way. It was going to be kind of a limited role. I would have probably tried Kobe at some point, but once he didn't play in the first half, it was pretty obvious that was going to be not the case in this game, and he was kind of just available for some depth insurance if something happened to Trey or DeJounte because Patty Mills was out. So I don't love it, but I also wasn't like outraged either because I don't think there was going to be a huge role there. And for the most part, like the top 7 guys played 27 minutes or more for the Hawks, and then Bruno played pretty much exactly the non-Okongwu minutes until the very end when they went small. So, no surprises. It's just what it is, and we'll see if Buffkin plays at all on Wednesday. But I do think, and I said this a little bit on the show on Saturday when I talked about how good he played, I thought he looked good on defense in particular. It's a little bit more difficult to see him playing a ton of minutes with Trey and DJ both available because the way that Quinn runs his rotation, it's pretty short. If Bogey... So I should say this, if Bogey, Trey, and DeJounte are all available, which happens more often than not, there aren't a ton of minutes available. And that's kind of just going to be what I'll be interested to see how they sort of operate that with Buffkin because I think it's important to play him, but at the same time, like it's not like there's 30 minutes available every night for Kobe Buffkin. So we'll come back to that later on if we need to. The Hawks were up 13 in the first quarter. Bogey had a couple jump shots. They were feeling it. They were laughing. They were having fun. And then the Bulls closed the first quarter on an 8-2 run. The Hawks did have 11 assists and no turnovers in the first quarter, which obviously is pretty impressive. But a 15-4 extended run by the Bulls to get back within 2 early in the second quarter. Hunter, though, was red hot. He hit 3 threes in a hurry. He and Bogey were hot the entire game, really, on offense. And the Hawks were up by 9 points with like 2-ish minutes to go in the first half. And that was the last time they were really in control of this game because the Bulls closed the first half on a 12-2 run to go up by 1. So after all of that, the Hawks being up comfortably pretty much the entire half. They were down 1 at the halftime break. The offense got very, very stagnant. If you want to complain about something offensively in this game, I would point to the guards in particular, but really the entire team getting stagnant and kind of losing the plot offensively. After a strong start when they were moving the ball well, it was a little bit too stagnant. Again, like a little bit too much settling, some contested shots, lack of flow, some bad turnovers, etc. And that kind of cost them along with some shot making by the Bulls. So in the first half, Trey and DJ were 3-15 from the floor, and the Hawks were missing threes, and that kind of continued for the most part. There were some fireworks early in the second half. Murray got fouled, I thought, pretty clearly, like maybe twice or 3 times in the backcourt. It was uncalled, ended up being a turnover, and then Trey was clearly enraged by that lack of a non-call. He got right in the official's face to the point where I was a little bit worried that he actually might get ejected. He got a tee. That's his 10th of the season. For reference, you could only have 15 before you get suspended on the 16th. So that's something to keep an eye on in the last couple of months of the season. And then Quinn called timeout pretty fast. So there was a little bit of unease early in the third quarter. Then they had ball security issues as well. They had 4 turnovers in about 7 minutes or so. And then just defensively, I know I talked about it earlier, but I'll just kind of say it now in the third quarter in particular. It was a lack of containment of the ball in general. They, point of attack has been a problem for 3 years now. So not like a huge surprise, but whether it was Trey, whether it was DJ, whether it was Bogey in particular, Bay, even Johnson and Hunter were not like immune to this. They're usually better. It was really rough. They were letting Dosunmu and White kind of get wherever they want to. DeRozan, again, is kind of different. Like he's a more under control, kind of at his pace, slower pace, like pull up jump shooter, all that stuff. Like it wasn't like he was getting anywhere he wanted to off the dribble by beating guys. He kind of was just crafty. But the fact that they could not contain the ball, even with guys like Javon Carter, who's like he's not really an on-ball player, he was able to get to his spots. So it was really rough. They actually allowed 24 points in the paint in the third quarter, plus 10 free throw attempts. So if you pulled out for the full game, that'd be 96 points in the paint on pace. That's obviously terrible. So yeah, it was rough. They were down by 9 late in the third, got it back to 5. They did trim the rotation down to 8 by skipping Garrison. Hunter made a couple plays early in the fourth quarter on defense to kind of get the Hawks back engaged. The second one was a run out for a bucket. Quinn Snyder pretty demonstratively and excitedly fist pumped at DeAndre coming off the floor. Like he was really happy about that run in particular. They got the lead down to 1. They never took the lead in the fourth quarter, but they were down by 1 point after a Murray mid-range jump shot like halfway through the quarter. Bogey was still hot. They tried to get Trey and Jalen back in, but there wasn't a stoppage for a long time. And by the time they actually got a timeout and got those guys back into the game, they were down 6 with about 4:40 to go. Then they had an implosion the next minute or so. Trey got a flopping technical foul with like 4 minutes left in a competitive game, which was kind of a weird call. They were down 10 at that point in time. Then they tried to go to a no center lineup to juice the offense, I thought. Now, here's some context here. I mentioned it once before. I thought, because Quinn often will do this, and a lot of coaches do, they will go small to when you're losing by a considerable margin in the fourth quarter. It increases variance when you go small, in theory. And that, yeah, you're probably going to hemorrhage some defense, but when you're already down 10, it kind of just like raises the speed of the game, raises 3-point shots. And I thought that was what they were doing. Like, I didn't necessarily love or hate that. I thought that was what they were going to do. But after the game, we found out from Quinn Snyder that Okongwu hurt his toe. Now, we don't know anything else beyond that other than he was being evaluated and that Quinn said he couldn't come back in the game. So that isn't great. Toe could be anything. Could be a broken toe. Could be nothing. We'll see. But obviously with Capella already out, and I think the widespread assumption is that Capella's not going to play on Wednesday, at the very least. Bruno was not good in this game, and Okongwu obviously has been really good recently. He wasn't as good today, but like they're going to need him. So it's a huge looming question. If that's a lengthy injury, the Hawks will be in some trouble. If he's just out for a little bit of time, that wouldn't be so bad. But something to circle there in the coming days. But that didn't work. They couldn't get the stops. I mean, that's the thing. They got the deficit down to 6. That was as close as it got in the final minute. But even then, some faint life. It was short-lived, and they simply could not get stops. I said it before, but they allowed a 138 defensive rating in the second half of this game. The Bulls scored 76 points, and this is, again, not a good offense. So the Hawks just could not get stops. Offensively, they did enough. I mean, they scored 77 points in the second half. Sorry, 67 points in the second half. That's still a lot. It just wasn't enough stops along the way. And when you're down, that's the underrated portion always when you're trying to sort of make a comeback. You got to get stops, and the Hawks just couldn't do it. They kept scoring, but they couldn't get stops, and they were basically dead from there. So if you're scoring at home, the Hawks essentially were down the entire second half. They were never down like an insurmountable amount, but they never got it back on the rails, and that 13-point lead from the first half felt like it was a long way out. Again, it was 31-18 in this game, and the rest of the way, the Bulls won by 23 points over about a 38-minute period. So we'll leave it there for now. We'll have more on the player stuff in just one moment, but first, a word from our sponsors on the show today. This segment is brought to you by the folks at BetterHelp. Sometimes we actually need the opportunity to get something off our chest, big or small, certain things that actually can start to get to you along the way. It's important to let that stuff out, especially to someone who is unbiased on your life. So today I want to tell you about how I feel about something, and for maybe a few of you in similar space, you will potentially understand. and that is that I have some unease about the next steps in the media business right now. I'm not talking about just the fact that the Hawks are reporting and all that stuff that I do on this podcast, but whether there's actually going to be stuff to report on and jobs available in the sports media space, whether the work that I do in different ways will be able to be continued how it is now. And of course, it's not the most important thing in the world, the most intense thing, life-altering topics. Therapy can be different for everybody. Most of us, including me, have much bigger problems than the stuff involving sports and the media stuff, but it's also quite important to get things off your chest every once in a while. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be flexible. It's suited to your schedule. And the place to go is betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA. You get 10% off your first month with BetterHelp. That's betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA. One more time, the place to go is BetterHelp, betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, into the player evaluations at the end of the podcast. Not a ton of positives, but I will start positive and then talk about Hunter and Bogdanovic. So I mentioned before they combined for crazy numbers in this game, but Bogey was really awesome on offense. 28 points to lead the entire Hawks team in scoring. In 27 minutes, he was 5 of 6 on twos. He was 6 of 10 on threes, 4 assists and a steal. Bogey has been shooting the ball a little bit better. He had kind of a swoon. He had that famously scalding hot start to the season where I was coming on the podcast and talking regularly about how he should be, if not the leader and sixth man of the year voting, certainly near the top of the list. I've cooled on that a little bit. I think he's still definitely a real candidate, but he did not shoot the ball particularly well for a few weeks. And now he's kind of coming back to life a little bit here with 6 threes today. He had 4 against the Clippers. He had 4 against the Suns. He had 4 against the Lakers, and etc. So been a little bit better. He was awesome in this game as a shooter. Obviously, it's helpful when he makes all the shots. Now, defensively, Bogey's been rough for a while. Not a huge surprise there, but he was still a valuable player in this game. And then DeAndre Hunter was very good as well. 23 points in 28 minutes. That's the most minutes he's played since he got back. He had not topped 23 and a half, 24 since then. No real update. People kept asking me like what his workload's going to be or whether he'll start again in the near future. TBD on that. It would not surprise me if they wanted to keep him in this role for a little while longer. Usually Hunter is a starter. Like as soon as he's ready to go, he's a starter again. But they're sort of ramping him up a little bit. But I thought he was really good in this game. 23 and 6, had 2 blocks. He had 4 threes, got to the line 7 times. That's a huge thing. So yeah, he's showing signs of being positive. Of course, he sat the game on Saturday with the back-to-back. So they're obviously managing the knee. And that might be a good idea for a while, but one more game and then sort of a long break to kind of get him even healthier, hopefully, in the future. And I said it before, I'll say it again now. The Hawks are a different team, generally speaking, when they have all of Hunter, Bey, and Johnson available. They just have more size, they have more physicality, and that's certainly something that Snyder's talked about a lot as well. And then especially defensively with Hunter and Jalen, those are so far and away their 2 best defensive forwards that having those guys both available is very helpful for a team that just needs defense up and down the line. Garrett Matthews played 4 minutes, as I mentioned before, 0 points, didn't take a shot in the game, had a rebound. I thought he was fine, but he didn't like change your world or anything like that. And obviously Bucket would have been a little bit different, but I'll leave that there for now. I thought Bruno really struggled. Now, I will be charitable a little bit to Bruno in that he was just very sick for a couple days. He missed the game on Saturday with illness. There is an illness going around the team right now. Obviously, Patty Mills still out. Wes Matthews still out. AJ Griffin missed this game with illness, so they have a serious something going on, flu-like or whatever. They have not talked about what it is, but obviously Bruno was quite sick. He was on the injury report for this game, ended up playing. I'm sure he was not 100%, and he did not play very well. Obviously, I thought the first half, it was like pretty jarringly bad, honestly. And part of that was that Okongwu was so good in the first half, and Bruno was so bad in the first half. The second half, it was a little bit more even, but I thought he obviously was overmatched in this game. Did have 7 rebounds, 2-5 from the floor, 3 fouls, like just not his best at all. And, I'm someone who defends Bruno a lot. I think Bruno's pretty good, but tonight it was not his best effort, for sure. To the starters, we'll save Trey and Jonathan for the end. I thought Okongwu, Bey, and Johnson were all fine-ish, but not particularly good. Sadiq, 11 points, 5 rebounds, had 3 assists, 0-5 from 3, so obviously some regression there, unfortunately. 5-6 on twos. I thought he was always physical, but in space, he was kind of a mess defensively, as he sometimes is. Jalen, 13 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists. Had some nice flashes offensively, but defensively, I thought he was actually kind of notably rough in this game. Again, he wasn't like awful overall, but minus 13 and kind of earned that, I thought. Okongwu was really good in the first half and not particularly good in the second half, I didn't think. He did rebound the ball well. 12 rebounds in the game for Okongwu in 33 minutes, 11 points, had a block shot. He was okay on the whole, but not his best. He'd been playing better than this the last few games before this. So like the trio of the front court, having no standouts was kind of notable in this one. I thought Hunter was probably their best front court player on the whole, maybe along with Okongwu, but yeah, nothing special there. And then Trey DJ, you know, I gave the numbers earlier, but one more time: 10 of 31 from the floor, 4 of 18 from three. They both had a lot of assists, so they actually combined for 23 assists, and that's obviously very good. It's a ton of assists. It's hard to have two guys combine for 23 assists and not play well, but that kind of happened in this game. So DeJounte was the one who shot it a little bit better from the field than Trey did. He was 7 of 17 from the floor and 2 of 8 from 3, but only got to the line for 2 attempts and missed one of them, and he had 6 turnovers. So I thought Murray was not good. Defensively, they were both part of the problem, but Murray was not. Certainly, he's been better recently, but he was not very good in this game defensively. Like he was better than Trey was in the second half, I will say. But on the whole, inefficient. Did not assist, but 6 turnovers is a little bit rough. And then Trey was really bad. I mean, he got to the line 12 times. He had 14 assists. This is also individually crazy that I'm talking about a guy not playing well at all who had 14 assists and 2 turnovers. But Trey wasn't very good. I mean, you're grading on a curve always with some players, and Trey and DeJounte are really good players, so they don't have the same level of play well or play poorly that other guys might. But Trey was really rough offensively in this one. He was 3 of 14 on the floor, 2 of 10 on threes. 2 turnovers is pretty good actually for him at 19 points, but he was minus 14. Defensively, it was one of his worst games in a while. They just have to get something better from either Trey or DeJounte, preferably both. And bad timing to have them both not play well. Again, they almost got bailed out by Bogey going crazy and Hunter playing really well. But overall, it was just a not great performance from the Hawks. And defensively, it was certainly kind of a porous evening, to say the least. So, from here, before we get off this podcast and into a Tuesday, the Hawks play one more time before the All-Star break. And the game is on Wednesday, which is also Valentine's Day, up in Charlotte. Then they will have more than a week between games due to the actual All-Star break itself. And Trey is the only person participating in All-Star Weekend. So basically, everybody on the roster, other than Trey, gets some time off to hopefully rest and recuperate. And Quinn talked about that tonight, all that stuff. Just for some comparison's sake, the Hornets are quite bad this year, but they're actually playing better now. They've made some trades that were certainly future-facing at the deadline, but they've now won 2 games in a row. They are still, don't get me wrong, they are not good. They are, I believe it's 7 and 21 at home and 12 and 41 overall. So that's a game where the Hawks should be favorites even on the road in Charlotte. But the Hornets are playing better. And the Hawks, by the way, did lose in Charlotte. I was actually at that game in the season opener. That's a very different team. They don't have Terry Rozier. They don't have LaMelo Ball. Like, it's a different team, and they're not good. But the Hawks will be interesting to see how they kind of respond to this game and sort of a letdown spot. Last game before the break is interesting. Like, guys are ready to get out of town, but you got to take care of business. Also, the looming question about Okongwu's toe. I think Capella, I expect to be out. It would be very surprising to me if they played Capella, a veteran with some injury stuff, one game before the All-Star break. It would make a lot of sense to me, just logically, if he was even kind of ready to rest him another week and a half, 2 weeks. But we'll see. So if they don't have Okongwu and Capella both, you get into a adventure. Bruno's got to play real minutes. They got to go small, and they have forward challenges. It wouldn't be as bad as it was on Saturday without Bruno, because they would at least have Hunter, who would give them some more physicality than just having Bay and Johnson as the only forwards. But so that for now, just as a PSA, I am traveling over the All-Star break, so we'll have a little bit of I'm trying to check in on some pre-recorded episodes. Like I'm not going to go silent for a week and a half, but it'll be interesting kind of navigate that whole thing in the next couple of days. So stay tuned for all that. Please subscribe to the podcast. But we'll have a new show at the very least after the game on Wednesday. I'll be dialed into that one. And then All-Star Weekend is All-Star Weekend. And then we'll get into the break and then a return to play in about a week and a half after the game on Wednesday. So the best place to find us is basically anywhere you listen to podcasts. Anywhere you find them, either on the audio side or the video side, Apple Podcasts and Spotify and Overcast and others on the audio side, as well as YouTube on the video side. If you're an audio subscriber to the podcast, you also get some bonus content from Locked On Sports Atlanta. They do these postcast episodes that are in addition to what I do as well. So just some free bonus stuff in your audio feeds. And then on video, you will see my shining face on a regular basis. But likes and subscriptions and follows and ratings and reviews, all that stuff is very much appreciated. Find a Hawks fan friend or two and share the podcast with them. I've been meeting a lot of you at Hawks games. I really do appreciate all the love. Honestly, it's been awesome to kind of get to know some folks over the course of the season, but hopefully that will continue to happen to increase the audience and the community that we have around this podcast, around the team, etc. Follow the show on Twitter/X at Locked On Hawks. Follow me there as well at BT Rowland. I write about the Hawks, share some audio, etc. at patreon.com/BT Rowland as well. And yeah, with all of that said, we'll see you at the very latest after the game on Wednesday. We'll have some, hopefully, some content coming through with some guests in the next week and a half. I won't give too much of that away right now because hopefully it will still happen. But yeah, go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. Tell a friend about the show, and we'll see you next time.